لا وقع خاص عندي. Hi, how are you? We met before outside. When you work, so you have a elegant young people. I would say I'm not young. At the moment, although Egypt is surrounded by, well, to say, a big pyramid of troubles and of instability. Whether you are looking to the north or to the south, east or west, it's almost the same thing. Insofar as the world, there's some time.
Thank you very much, one of the most gracious and the most beautiful. Excellencies, dear friend, it gives me great pleasure to join host the event together with awesome policy to heartily welcome our distinguished guest, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Al-Arabi, to this important and timely event. I would also like to welcome and extend our gratitude to our participants, partners both here and online, of course, including our young scholars and academic interns of our institute, the International Institute for Business Studies. Ambassador Rabi, as I'm sure you're all well aware of, has had a long and distinguished career as a diplomat.
Related to the United Nations, all the professors, members of parliament, and especially also, of course,
what happens between Israel and Gaza. I think this is one of the most pressing issues. I was appalled when I saw what happened in Gaza. I must say that we hear very, very often the foreign minister, but also the EU commissioner, with the European Union gave a lot of money to the Palestinians on both sides, and also in Gaza. So therefore, this question is really very interesting. What do you think, how long will it take that we find out this story? Because I think we can find out in Israel there is a new chance of bringing some sort of peace together. This is, I know, something that also the Israeli opposition is, of course, trying and thinking, but it's very difficult to get rid of him, which I have to supply. There's also all the families of the hostages. I mean, they must be so terribly affected because there are still so many hostages there. Others are dead, but even the bodies have to come back. So this is one side. And the other side is what could be the right thing in Gaza? Could there be, as you said, an administrative committee of the Palestinians from the West Bank and maybe some other Arab countries? How could one think of such a positive way of going forward if the Palestinians, and I agree, should remain in Gaza?
We don't have a region that most of these countries are within the region that is usually having a very strong military network. While we have one country with military country out. So we are signing a not at a time, but a political message. Signing means that we fully support the principle, we support the idea, but not ratifying means that we have a strong concern by leaving one country. And by doing so, we always try to give the message to the partner that we put in pressure of this country to be part of it. In any place in the world, in any region, we're going to have a very tense region like I mentioned, our region in the Middle East. Not have one country that is outside of anything, certain part, there's no bound by anything. Then this group of countries can totally have a very strong regime of distribution. So this is where I think the most of the reasons for countries very strong organization, finding the composition of the distribution, finding what that will be an obligation. So there are political messages. Not against the idea, fully positive, but the different formats, including the we try to be always discussing. But it was a surprise with the agreement on the Middle East that we will do on the process. All countries, including Iran, are part of the negotiation, are part of the regular annual meeting. That's the contribution. So how can you be part of the regime while you other neighbor of one of the countries that has a capacity
like this is the opportunity to ask a very different question. We do have in Europe now a new debate about nuclear weapons. And also, as in Ukraine, where people alluded has and could use nuclear weapons. And you better than I do, that's also the name of much better. But we do have this, of course, the nuclear weapon free zone in the Middle East. Doesn't really go. I have a specific question. It doesn't really go around because we have to debate about Iran's nuclear program and has nuclear weapons. But in the south, we have the weapon free zone Iran. And Egypt signed it in '96. So short before what became our prime minister. So the first question would be, why does Egypt not ratify? It would be an opportunity. So, after all, I have to say Egypt presented the first proposal in the 70s about the nuclear weapon free zone in the Middle East. Egypt was on the forefront about this debate. Belindaba is one issue, but since we are here in Austria was in the forefront to develop and set up a restrict on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. So most of the third countries in the global south, not so much Europeans, because Europeans are members of NATO and the states, allies and not sign it. But why did not Egypt sign the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons? So there were two very specific questions, very powerful and very quantitative.
The Middle East and particularly Palestine. Allow me some short remarks. I think today we are witnessing a collapse of so-called rule-based international order. And I have to say the collapse of the rule-based international order did not start on the 20th of January. Started before, started with the war on Gaza. They started with the European Union and European countries who disregarded many UN resolutions, disregarded rulings by the International Court of Justice, disregarded rulings by the International Criminal Court. In fact, today, Netanyahu is visiting one EU member state, which is Hungary. Yes. In a clear breach of the ICC arrest warrant against Netanyahu and his former defense minister. So I think, in essence, this is the problem. It is not only the problem of Palestine, it is a global problem. International Court of Justice said in January 2024 that it is plausible that Israel is committing genocide and issued provisional measures which were completely ignored by Israel. In May 2024, the court issued an order for Israel not to invade Rafah. And there were many European, even the United States of America, said Rafah is a red line. Israel crossed this red line. So the issue is Israel was allowed and is being allowed to act with impunity. Israel was never ever held accountable. You rightly said Israel has the capacity to block humanitarian assistance. But why? Because simply they're allowed to act with impunity. Israel was never ever held accountable by the international community. To the contrary, I remember that senior EU politicians, including the foreign minister of this country, where we're sitting now, Schellenberg, was justifying the atrocities committed by Israel. They were justifying the attacks on hospitals, saying these are humans being used as human shields. It turned out that none of the hospitals was used as human shields. The German foreign minister said the same. Said, protection of civilians doesn't apply in this case because Hamas is using civilians as human shields. So again, it is not only allowing Israel to act in impunity, it is basically giving the justification for Israel to continue with its atrocities. Today, we have to remind everybody that the Israeli parliament voted almost unanimously against the two-state solution. So, to negotiate with whom? Do we have a partner on the other side to negotiate with? And let me end by saying the following. The International Court of Justice issued an advisory opinion on the 19th of July of last year, which said occupation of the Palestinian territory since 1967 is illegal and has to end soon. Further, they said, third countries, which means the countries of the world, has a responsibility not to provide any kind of support to Israel, not military, not financial, not diplomatic, which will help it to maintain its occupation. Again, an advisory opinion, I do understand that an advisory opinion is not binding for countries, but still it is the advisory opinion of the highest judicial instance in the world. And again, it was ignored by the vast majority of European countries, let alone the United States of America. Again, I am afraid today we will be facing, when we allow the breach of international law in the Middle East, we will allow it to be breached everywhere.
Let me elaborate on that.
This big picture, when I was coming here, I was hoping that we would get a very good proposal with a positive end. However, as Brahimi Accord, which you mentioned, some of the Muslim world recognized Israel with the hope that we would bring some kind of a relaxation or for the Palestinian people, which was not the case, which we can see today. There are again debate in the several Islamic countries to recognize or normalize Israel under pressure or voluntarily or involuntarily. I don't want to go into that debate. What will be your proposal to those countries in order to protect the right of the Palestinians?
Well, actually, so this is part of the new report.
Thank you for your remarks. And
we feel we are the part of, we feel ourselves as part of the Middle East. So we consider the region, country of the region. So sometimes, you know, this, talking about outside power like Turkey and Iran. We are saying that it's what you prefer to mention the really country of the Middle East. And so that's why we are trying to find, or we are trying to include it in the possible solution plan in the Middle East, problem of the Middle East. So that our Prime Minister mentioned also. And we believe that the problems of the Middle East, of the region, can be solved only by the country or the country of the region. That's our side. And so, Turkey and peace and stability means peace and stability. And as you very correctly mentioned, and we have 911 kilometers border with Syria. Energy and stability in Syria directly affects Syria. So it's so that it's also the country of Gaza. So we are also doing our best, you know, to find a solution to this problem of cooperate with these solidarity with our countries, especially as you mentioned, Egypt and Turkey, and one of the pillars of the world. So, my question is, you know, unfortunately, as long as the Israeli aggression continues in the region, so what will be the, which or who will, or what will hold or stop this aggression? Is it the US or any administration change in Israel, or who and what? And the second question is there any key plan for the Arab world for the solution of the Palestinian? You mentioned that you were in for Arab world as a plan for the whole Gaza. Rejected by Americans. But for it rejected, so is there any key plan?
Very good reaction to Arabic towards the question to you and to Arabic is what are the countries allow me just one comment because of the question of business asking about sanctions, how we should behave towards Syria. The question is, what are the alternatives not to submit to these sanctions, to cancel sanctions? There is no other option. And I think this is very crucial to think about the future of the people. I was in Syria 1 month before, and we are planning also to visit Syria once again. The people have needs of everything. You know, stop transferring money to Syria and not letting SWIFT and the money coming from other countries who would like to send that. And also in that, there is also economic interest of Europe, Austria, and Europe in that. What is the alternative? There is no. So therefore, I put my place to cancel and to accept this